10 of America's most popular pistols are about to become illegal to own, and if you think this doesn't affect you because you don't live in California or you don't own these specific models, you're not paying attention to how this works. California just banned the Glock 19, not some obscure firearm that nobody's heard of, but the single most popular pistol in American history, owned by an estimated 15 million people. Federal lawmakers are introducing copycat legislation targeting high-capacity handguns, and multiple states are lining up to follow California's lead with their own versions of these restrictions. We're watching the systematic dismantling of civilian access to the exact same firearms that law enforcement, military special operations, and federal agencies trust with their lives every single day. The Beretta 92 FS served as America's military sidearm for 35 years, and now lawmakers want to make it illegal for the citizens those soldiers were defending. The Sig Sauer P320 won the contract to replace the Beretta as the military's official service weapon, and it's facing state-level bans that could make it illegal for civilians in multiple jurisdictions. When Navy SEALs carry Glock 19s, when the FBI issues them to agents, when the Secret Service protects the president with them, but ordinary citizens can't legally purchase them for home defense, we've crossed a line that fundamentally redefines the relationship between government and the governed. This isn't about public safety, this is about control. And what's happening right now in 2026 represents the most significant threat to Second Amendment rights in modern American history. Before we break down all 10 pistols on these ban lists, you need to subscribe to this channel right now because these laws are changing faster than most gun owners realize, and the consequences are already affecting millions of Americans. Turn on notifications. This isn't fear-mongering. California's Glock ban takes effect mid-2026, federal legislation is actively being debated in Congress, and state legislatures are introducing new restrictions every single week. If you own any of these pistols, if you were planning to purchase one, if you care about the precedent being set when the government can ban the most popular and most reliable firearms in existence, you need to stay informed about every development as it happens. Hit subscribe right now, because the next restriction, the next ban, the next legislative move could make your legally purchased firearm illegal to transfer, illegal to sell, and eventually subject to mandatory buyback or confiscation. This is happening. This is real, and ignorance won't protect you when they come for your property. Let's start with the Springfield Armory XDM, a pistol that's been the backbone of competitive shooting circuits for years. Thousands of shooters rely on this firearm for USPSA and IDPA competitions because of its match-grade accuracy and exceptional trigger. Law enforcement officers across the country have chosen the XDM as their backup weapon, specifically because of its proven reliability under stress. Everyday Americans trust it for concealed carry because it works every single time without failure. But new state laws are specifically targeting polymer-framed pistols with magazine capacities over 10 rounds, and the XDM's standard 19-round magazine puts it directly in the danger zone. States like California and Illinois have introduced legislation that redefines what they call high-capacity handguns, and the XDM fits their criteria perfectly because of how many rounds it holds out of the box. Here's what nobody's asking: why is 10 rounds the magic number? What's the constitutional basis for deciding that 11 rounds makes a firearm too dangerous for civilian ownership, but 10 rounds is acceptable? The answer is there isn't one. It's arbitrary. It's a number chosen because it sounds reasonable to people who don't understand firearms, and it's being used to ban some of the most popular and most reliable pistols in America. The XDM isn't some exotic weapon. It's a competition pistol with match-grade accuracy that's also suitable for home defense because of its capacity and reliability. Making it illegal doesn't reduce crime. Criminals don't buy Springfield XDMs at gun stores with background checks. It just disarms competition shooters and law-abiding citizens who chose this specific pistol for legitimate purposes. Now consider the Beretta 92 FS, which served as the United States military's official service weapon for 35 years. This pistol replaced the legendary 1911 in 1985 and became the M9 that saw action in Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, and countless other conflicts where American troops needed a sidearm they could stake their lives on. When these service members came home, many of them purchased the civilian version of the exact same pistol they carried overseas because they knew firsthand how dependable it was under the worst possible conditions imaginable. Combat veterans trust the Beretta 92 FS because they used it in firefights. They know it works when your life depends on it. But proposed federal legislation targeting handguns with magazine capacities over 10 rounds puts the 92 FS squarely in the crosshairs since its standard magazine holds 15 rounds of 9mm ammunition. States like New York and Connecticut have already expanded their assault weapon definitions to include semi-automatic pistols with threaded barrels, and many 92 FS models come with threaded barrels for attaching suppressors or muzzle devices. So here's the question that demands an answer. If this pistol was good enough to be America's official military sidearm for over 3 decades, if it was trusted to protect American soldiers in combat zones around the world, why is it suddenly too dangerous for American citizens to own for home defense? The hypocrisy is staggering. The government issues these firearms to 18-year-old soldiers and sends them to war zones, but tells 35-year-old civilians with families that they can't be trusted with the same weapon to protect their homes. Military heritage doesn't make a firearm more dangerous. It actually proves reliability and effectiveness under the most demanding conditions possible. But that military heritage is being used as justification for bans, as if the fact that soldiers carried it somehow makes it inappropriate for civilian ownership. The logic collapses under the slightest scrutiny. Move to the CZ P10C, and you see European engineering excellence slamming into American political restrictions. CZ created this striker-fired compact pistol specifically to compete with Glock in the American concealed carry market, and they absolutely nailed it with a trigger that's widely considered superior to anything Glock has ever produced. Everyday carriers love this pistol because it's the perfect size for concealed carry, not too big, not too small. And it holds 15 rounds in the standard magazine without feeling bulky under a shirt. The problem is that being foreign-made adds an extra layer of vulnerability that domestic manufacturers don't face, because proposed federal legislation includes specific language about restricting imports of high-capacity pistols from overseas. Colorado just passed sweeping handgun transfer requirements that affect all semi-automatic pistols, forcing private sellers to go through federal firearms dealers and adding fees, waiting periods, and paperwork to what used to be simple transactions between friends or family members. Does it make any sense whatsoever to ban a pistol just because it was manufactured in the Czech Republic instead of Connecticut when they function exactly the same way? The CZ-P10C isn't more dangerous because it crossed an ocean. It's not less suitable for self-defense because the factory is in Europe instead of America. But foreign manufacture creates legislative vulnerability that lawmakers are actively exploiting to restrict imports, and once those import restrictions take effect, parts availability disappears, resale value crashes, and owners are left holding firearms they can't properly maintain or transfer. The CZ-P10C represents superior engineering at a competitive price point, but none of that matters when political considerations override market forces and consumer choice. Then there's the Sig Sauer P320, the pistol that won the United States military contract to replace the Beretta and became the official M17 and M18 service weapons for America's armed forces. Sig Sauer's P320 revolutionized the handgun market with its modular design that allows you to swap grip modules, slides, and barrels to create different configurations from a single serialized fire control unit, which is precisely why both military and law enforcement agencies switched to it in massive numbers. Police departments across America have transitioned to the P320 because of its reliability, capacity, and the ability to customize it for different officer hand sizes without purchasing completely new pistols for every individual. But California introduced micro-stamping requirements that essentially ban all new semi-automatic pistol models from being sold in the state, and the P320 doesn't have this technology because, and this is critical, the technology doesn't actually work in real-world conditions. Micro-stamping is supposed to imprint a unique identifier on fired cartridge cases, but the technology is unreliable, easily defeated with a simple file, and no major manufacturer can implement it without redesigning their entire firing pin system. California knows this. Legislators know the technology doesn't work, but they're using it as a backdoor ban mechanism anyway, requiring technology that doesn't exist as a condition for legal sales, effectively prohibiting new pistol models from entering the California market. The P320 won the military contract. It's the official service weapon of the United States Armed Forces. Soldiers carry it. But California residents can't buy new ones because of a technological requirement that's physically impossible to meet. If that's not proof that these laws have nothing to do with public safety and everything to do with incremental prohibition, what would constitute proof? The Smith Wesson M&P 9M2.0 is one of the best-selling pistols in American history, and it just got specifically named in federal ban proposals. If you own a Smith Wesson M&P 9M2.0, you need to understand how serious this threat actually is, because this isn't vague legislation that might affect some firearms. This is specific language naming this exact model. The M&P series has been steadily gaining market share from Glock for years because Smith & Wesson listened to what shooters wanted and delivered it. Better ergonomics, improved triggers, and aggressive grip texture that works even with wet or sweaty hands. Law enforcement adoption rates for the M&P are incredibly high, with entire police departments switching from Glocks to M&Ps because officers shoot them more accurately and prefer how they feel in their hands. Competition shooters trust them for USPSA. Home defenders rely on them for bump-in-the-night scenarios. Concealed carriers appreciate the compact versions that disappear under clothing. But Senate proposals are specifically naming semi-automatic pistols with capacities over 10 rounds in their legislative language, and the M&P 9M2.0 holds 17-round standard, putting it directly in the crosshairs. Here's the question nobody in Congress wants to answer. When entire police departments choose this pistol over everything else on the market because their officers shoot it better and hit their targets more accurately, shouldn't citizens have the same choice to protect themselves and their families? If accuracy and reliability make the M&P 9M2.0 the best choice for law enforcement officers facing armed criminals, those exact same qualities make it the best choice for citizens facing home invaders or violent attackers. But the legislative logic says police can have it, military can have it, federal agents can have it, just not you, not the citizen, not the person the Second Amendment was written to protect. Subscribe to this channel right now if you want to stay ahead of every legislative development, every new restriction, every state following California's lead with copycat bans. Turn on notifications, because these laws are moving faster than most gun owners realize. What starts in California doesn't stay in California. It spreads to New York, Illinois, Washington, Colorado, and eventually gets introduced as federal legislation that affects every American, regardless of where they live. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment about which pistol on this list you own or were planning to purchase, and share this video with every gun owner you know, because widespread awareness is the only defense against incremental prohibition that happens while people aren't paying attention. The FN 509 represents Belgian military contractor FN's civilian pistol caught in American political crossfire, facing double jeopardy from both import restrictions and domestic capacity bans that could eliminate it from the market entirely. FN Herstal developed the 509 as their submission for the military trials that Sig ultimately won with the P320, but serious shooters recognized that the 509 offered features many preferred: A lower bore axis for reduced muzzle flip, better stock trigger, and exceptional reliability even in dirty conditions. The pistol gained a loyal following among those who wanted something different from the Glock and M&P pistols that dominate most gun store displays, and FN's reputation for quality from their military contracts gave buyers confidence they were getting a serious defensive tool. But being foreign-made creates unique vulnerability because proposed federal legislation specifically targets military pattern handguns from foreign manufacturers, which is obviously aimed at pistols like the FN 509. Washington state just passed sweeping magazine restrictions banning any detachable magazine over 10 rounds, and the 509's standard 17-round capacity puts it directly in violation once the law takes effect. The FN 509 costs between $500 and $700. That's not a trivial investment for most working families. People who purchased these pistols legally, who went through background checks, who chose them specifically for their quality and reliability, are now watching their investment become illegal to transfer or sell. The premium price they paid for Belgian manufacturing quality becomes a wasted investment when state laws make the firearm illegal to own. This is confiscation through legislative attrition. Make it illegal to transfer, illegal to sell, illegal to import replacement parts, and eventually the firearm becomes worthless except as something to turn in during a mandatory buyback program. Now we get into the firearms that expose the class warfare dimension of these bans. The Canik TP9 series represents budget-friendly excellence from Turkey that's becoming impossible to import, and working-class Americans who depend on affordable self-defense options are about to lose access to one of the best values in the handgun market. Canik disrupted the entire pistol industry by offering features and quality that previously only existed on guns costing twice as much. Excellent triggers, high capacity, match-grade barrels, and reliability that rivals pistols costing $800 or more. First-time gun buyers gravitated to Canik because you could walk out of a gun store with a complete pistol, holster, extra magazines, and cleaning kit for around $400, making self-defense actually affordable for families on tight budgets. The TP9 series became wildly popular in just a few years, with hundreds of thousands sold in America, proving that you don't need to spend Glock money to get a pistol you can trust your life to. But specific federal legislation is targeting Turkish firearms imports using language about foreign semi-automatic pistols that don't meet sporting purposes, and the political motivation goes beyond gun control into international relations and trade disputes. When politicians revive Saturday Night Special language that specifically targets low-cost pistols, they're not talking about public safety. They're talking about disarming poor people. Wealthy individuals can always afford expensive firearms, but when you eliminate the $400 options and force people into the $800 market, you're pricing working families out of effective self-defense. That's not policy. That's class warfare disguised as public safety legislation. The Taurus G3C is America's most popular budget concealed carry pistol, and if these bans go through, hundreds of thousands of working Americans will lose access to affordable self-defense that actually works. The Taurus G3C absolutely dominates the budget concealed carry market because it offers legitimate quality at a price point that makes gun ownership accessible to people living paycheck to paycheck. This pistol changed Taurus's reputation from cheap and unreliable to affordable and dependable, with significant improvements in quality control, reliability testing, and customer service that put it on par with pistols costing $300 more. Concealed carriers love the G3C because it's the perfect size, small enough to disappear under a t-shirt, but large enough to shoot accurately when you need to defend yourself or your family. But legislative threats are coming from multiple directions simultaneously, with the G3C facing both magazine capacity restrictions because of its 12-round standard capacity and revival of Saturday Night Special language that targets low-cost pistols. Here's what that means in practice. If you're a single mother working 2 jobs to make rent, if you're a college student living in a sketchy neighborhood, if you're a delivery driver working late-night shifts in high-crime areas, and you scrape together $250 to buy a Taurus G3C for self-defense, these laws are specifically designed to take that option away from you. They don't disarm criminals who get their guns illegally anyway. They disarm the working poor who can't afford premium firearms but still deserve the constitutional right to protect themselves. When legislators talk about banning Saturday night specials, they mean banning the only guns that poor people can afford. That's the policy. That's the intent. And it's morally indefensible. Now we get to the Glock 17, the pistol that literally defined modern law enforcement and became the worldwide standard for police and military units. The Glock 17 is now becoming illegal for civilians to purchase, and the implications of banning this specific firearm are staggering. Glock's revolutionary polymer frame design changed handguns forever when it arrived in the United States in the 1980s, introducing reliability that made traditional metal pistols look outdated and capacity that doubled what most police were carrying at the time. Law enforcement agencies around the entire world adopted the Glock 17 as their standard service pistol because it simply worked under any conditions imaginable. Dropped in mud, soaked in water, frozen solid, or covered in sand, the Glock 17 would still fire every single time. The civilian market followed law enforcement's lead, with millions of Americans choosing the Glock 17 for home defense, because if it's good enough for police-facing armed criminals, it's good enough for citizens protecting their families from home invaders. California's Assembly Bill 1127 doesn't just ban the Glock 19, it bans all Glock models, including the full-size 17, using the technical reasoning that the cruciform trigger bar design makes any Glock convertible to full automatic with illegal Glock switches. Let's be clear about what that argument actually means. Because criminals illegally modify Glocks with devices that are already felonies to possess, California is banning legal Glock ownership for law-abiding citizens. That's like banning cars because some people install illegal nitrous oxide systems. It's like banning computers because some people use them to commit cybercrimes. The Glock switch is already illegal. Possessing one is a federal felony. Installing one is a federal felony. Using one is a federal felony. But instead of prosecuting the criminals who use illegal modifications, California is banning the legal firearms that 99.9% of owners use exactly as intended for lawful self-defense. The Glock 17 has 40 years of proven reliability across every condition and situation imaginable. Banning it doesn't make anyone safer. It just disarms millions of law-abiding citizens while criminals continue using illegally modified firearms that were already prohibited. And that brings us to number 1. The Glock 19, the single most popular pistol in American history, owned by an estimated 15 million Americans, facing outright bans that represent the most significant threat to Second Amendment rights in modern history. The Glock 19 earned its reputation as the perfect pistol because it hits the sweet spot for literally every use case imaginable. Compact enough for concealed carry, large enough for duty use, accurate enough for competition, and reliable enough to stake your life on without hesitation. Military Special Operations units, including Navy SEALs and Delta Force, carry Glock 19s as personal sidearms. The FBI issues them to agents. The Secret Service protects the President of the United States with them. And millions of everyday Americans trust them for concealed carry and home defense. Because universal adoption across every category of user proves the Glock 19 isn't some niche weapon. It's the default choice when you need a pistol that absolutely cannot fail when your life depends on it. California's Assembly Bill 1127 specifically targets the Glock mechanism, and while the law uses technical language about cruciform trigger bars and convertibility to machine guns, the effect is a complete ban on all Glock models, including the 19, taking effect in mid-2026. Think about what that means. Navy SEALs carry Glock 19s on classified missions. FBI agents carry them investigating federal crimes. Secret Service agents carry them protecting the president. But California residents can't legally purchase them for home defense. The same firearm trusted by America's most elite military operators and federal law enforcement becomes illegal contraband for ordinary citizens. If that doesn't expose the complete disconnect between public safety claims and actual legislative intent, nothing will. The Glock 19 isn't dangerous because of its design. It's targeted because it's popular, because it works, because 15 million Americans chose it. And banning the most popular pistol in history sends a message that no firearm is safe from prohibition if legislators decide they want to ban it. Here's what these 10 pistols reveal about the state of Second Amendment rights in 2026. Every single one of these firearms has legitimate defensive uses. Every single one has been adopted by law enforcement or military organizations specifically because of reliability and effectiveness. Every single one represents a lawful choice made by millions of Americans for self-defense, competition, or recreational shooting. And every single one is being targeted for bans, restrictions, or prohibitions using legislative language that ranges from arbitrary capacity limits to technical requirements that don't actually exist to import restrictions based on foreign manufacture. The through line connecting all 10 pistols is this. If they can ban the Glock 19, the most popular, most reliable, most proven pistol in American history, then nothing is safe. No firearm is too common to ban. No track record of lawful use matters. No amount of law enforcement adoption provides protection. The precedent being set right now in 2026 is that legislative majorities can prohibit any firearm for any reason using any justification that sounds plausible to people who don't understand guns. Magazine capacity becomes the excuse. Polymer frames become the excuse. Foreign manufacture becomes the excuse. Micro-stamping requirements that can't be met become the excuse. The excuse changes, but the result stays the same. Incremental prohibition that chips away at civilian gun ownership one category at a time until nothing remains. Subscribe to this channel immediately if you want to stay informed as these laws continue evolving. Because this is not the end point. It's the beginning of a much broader legislative push. Turn on notifications so you don't miss updates about federal copycat legislation, new state restrictions, or court challenges that might slow down or reverse these bans. Share this video with every gun owner you know, because millions of Americans still don't realize their legally purchased firearms are becoming illegal to own, transfer, or sell. Drop a comment about which pistol on this list you own or which ban concerns you most. The only defense against incremental prohibition is widespread awareness and political engagement, because these laws only pass when people aren't paying attention. The Glock 19 ban takes effect in California mid-2026. Federal legislation targeting high-capacity pistols is being debated in Congress right now. Multiple states are introducing copycat restrictions based on California's model. This is happening. This is real. And if you think it won't affect you because you don't live in California or you don't own these specific models, you're not understanding how this works. What starts in one state spreads to others. What targets 10 models eventually expands to 50. What bans pistols today comes for rifles tomorrow and shotguns next week. The systematic dismantling of Second Amendment rights doesn't happen all at once. It happens exactly like this. One popular firearm at a time, one seemingly reasonable restriction at a time, until the constitutional right to keep and bear arms exists only on paper while every practical means of exercising that right has been legislated out of existence. Stay informed, stay engaged, and understand that the fight to preserve gun rights in America isn't some abstract political debate. It's a concrete battle over whether 15 million Glock 19 owners become criminals for possessing the most popular pistol in history.